Flexibility.
George was a skillful communicator with many years of experience. He was retrenched alongside others in the broadcasting company where he worked as a presenter and a newscaster. The retrenchment was due to economic downturn. After a while, he saw an advertisement placed in a daily newspaper by a reputable international company looking for an experienced communicator to head the customer care department. He sent his curriculum vitae to the company and was shortlisted for an interview. He did well in the interview and was given the job. He agreed to resume work the following day. An old colleague of George, named Bruno, happened to be a close friend of Reno. Reno was the human resource manager of the company where George just got employed to head the customer care department. Bruno saw George and Reno at the company's car park. At the time, Reno was showing George his assigned parking space. After George drove away from the premises, Bruno walked up to Reno and they exchanged greetings. Bruno then asked Reno, "Who was Mr. George to you?" Reno answered, "So you know Mr. George? He was offered an employment to head the customer care department of the company. He was the most qualified candidate we had." Bruno said, "Yes, we were colleagues. He is very good at what he does as a communicator, but to offer him the job as a customer care personnel is another issue completely. At our former place of work, he used to say that he cannot beg anyone for any reason. He would rather do his things the right way than say he is sorry. He always stand his ground to prove his point when the need arises. He does not compromise and cannot pretend over any issue at all." Reno responded, "Thank you for this vital information. This pivot job requires a very flexible person to handle, because he will have to relate with various kinds of customers with different attitudes. We will have to reconsider the offer we gave him." Bruno asked Reno, "How do you intend to do that?" Reno replied, "Very simple. We will set him up. I will bring an outsider that will pretend to be an irate but very important customer. We will see how George will handle him." Reno brought in Pedro from outside and told him to park his car at George's parking space. Pedro had already parked his car at George's parking space around 7:30 a.m. That was about 30 minutes before George's resumption time. When George arrived, he honked the horn of his car and also signaled with his hand to Pedro, who parked at his space, to move away so that he could park his vehicle. Pedro remained in his car and pretended to be talking on phone. He signaled to George with his hand indicating a request for some minutes. Few minutes later, George honked the horn of his car again. This time with pressure alerting Pedro to leave, but Pedro ignored him and continued talking on the phone. He signaled again with his hand to George to give him more minutes. George angrily came out of his car, moved to the side of the visitor's car. George asked, "Are you a staff of this company?" Pedro answered, "No." George said, "You can clearly read the inscription that indicated that these spaces here were allotted to staff only. Why did you park here even though there are empty spaces meant for customers and visitors? Please leave now. I want to park in my space so that I can go and resume work." Pedro fired back at George, "I am one of your company's most important customers. Tell me the work you will have to do if persons like me don't patronize your company. I demand an apology for the noise you made to interrupt the important call I was making." George stood his ground and refused to apologize. Then the company's human resource manager, who was the orchestrator of the scenario, stepped forward to ask what the matter was. Pedro said, "Your staff was rude to me and as a result, I have decided to end my business transactions with your company. Going by the worth of my investment in your company, I deserve some respect from members of your staff." Reno insisted that George should apologize to Pedro in order to retain his patronage. George completely declined to apologize to Pedro, claiming that he did nothing wrong. Reno then said, "In that case, Mr. George, see me in my office immediately to sign the paper to terminate your appointment." On hearing this, George immediately began to apologize both to Pedro and Reno. Later in Reno's office, George said to Reno, "Even though it is not my style to apologize when I am on my right, I had to apologize to retain this work, as I desperately needed it to sustain my family at such a time as this." Reno responded, "Let me tell you a story. Some time ago a man took his family to the cinema. There were many people sitting in the large cinema hall. Suddenly, a deadly snake ran out of the nearby park across the road and headed for the entrance of the hall. This caused pandemonium among the security men and those people who were at the entrance of the hall. Everyone began to run here and there trying to get a stick, and some of those with sticks were too afraid to hit the snake. Part of the snake had already crossed the entrance into the hall. Suddenly, a man among those trying to get a stick decided to trample on the snake with a great force that immobilized the snake. Everyone present was amazed at his bravery and began to praise him. A man among them observed that the man who trampled on the snake was just wearing a pair of flip-flop. He then asked him why he took such a great risk. The man answered, "My wife and children are there in the hall, so also are the children and parents. If the snake should have its way into the hall, considering the population of the people in there, the damage will be enormous." Reno continued, "Stake is the crux of the story I have just told you. Our respective stakes in life often determine how we act. The man wearing a flip-flop went the extra mile to kill the snake with his leg, all because he has a stake, which were his wife and children in the hall. In this company, we need those who have a stake and equally see this company as a great stake. One that requires going the extra mile to protect. Those who don't have a stake in a system don't mind to do things anyhow. Like you just said that you need the job to sustain your family. That is your stake. Your stake will make you see this company as a stake. Meaning that this company's stake is a life support system for your stake, something to protect directly or indirectly. That means you and the company are on the same page. Even in the face of provocation, your stake will provide the needed restraint. What happened today was a setup to really establish what we've been told about you, that you usually wouldn't apologize to others when you are on your right. The success of this company is built on the principle of flexibility. Here, we beg and lobby when and where it is necessary, just so that the company can continue to thrive. Sometime when our ego is bruised, we force a smile so that we can remain in business. We need flexible hands and minds to sustain our business success. Customer care department is very important in this company, because if we must maintain our business success, we must maintain cordial relationship with our customers. The road to success is not always straight. It is meandering in nature. If you must get to your destination, you must be flexible enough to bend through the meandering path. Also note that to sustain your success, you must sustain your flexibility. The meandering path is a challenging path to every man at the verge of each level of success he wants to attain. If you choose to stop at a level of success, challenges stop there, but if you choose to go ahead, challenges lie ahead. You actually know who you are. If you need to pretend to be someone else at times in order to succeed, do so. You can only become a principal person when you pass the flexibility test as a principle of success. As it has been said, water finds its level. Everyone who intends to reach his peak must learn to continue to find his path even in undulating topography of life. When rules change, learn to adjust. Avoid struggling against the storm, rather take advantage of the force of the storm to achieve your dream. Flexibility doesn't rule out your sense of purposefulness and determination, it is rather a demonstration of wisdom. If you cannot go in by standing tall, consider bending and if need be, crawl rather than quit. The most important thing is for you to reach your destination. That is all I have to say for now, Mr. George. Your job here is still valid. Now, let me take you round the company and introduce you to the rest of the staff.